For as long as we have been human, we have believed death is a single moment. The heart stops, the lights go out, and you are simply gone. An instant, a switch. But in 2022, a man died by accident at exactly the wrong time, in exactly the right place. His brain was being recorded when it happened. And what the machine caught in his final 30 seconds is quietly rewriting what we thought dying even is. Because his brain did not switch off. Right at the end, it did something else. Something that looks on the screen almost exactly like remembering. This matters more than almost any question, because it is the one thing that will happen to every single person you have ever loved, and to you. Doctors have always drawn a hard line for the moment life ends, a line written into law, into every death certificate ever signed. But that line was never really measured. Nobody had proof of what happens inside a human brain at the exact second it crosses over. Until one accident forced doctors to ask something far stranger. What if the line itself is wrong, and the brain keeps working long after we assume it has gone silent? Stay with me, because where this ends is either the most comforting idea in modern science or the most unsettling. Here is the case that cracked it open, and it was never supposed to happen. In 2022, doctors published something no one had ever recorded before. An 87-year-old man had been brought into a hospital after a fall and wired to an EEG, a machine that reads the brain's electricity to watch for seizures. Nothing dramatic was expected. Then, while he was still hooked up, his heart suddenly stopped. He died, right there, mid-recording. They could not save him. But the machine never stopped writing. For the first time in history, we had a continuous recording of a single human brain crossing the line from alive to dead. Not a theory, not a story told years later. Raw data, second by second. So what does a brain actually do as it dies? You would expect it to fade, to go quiet, slower and slower, until it goes flat. And for a moment it did. But in the 30 seconds before his heart stopped, and the 30 seconds after, his brain did the opposite. It surged. One specific kind of brainwave lit up and grew stronger, right as everything else was shutting down. The dying brain, in its final minute, was not going dark. It was firing, hard. And the exact type of wave it was firing is where this stops being sad and starts being strange. The waves were gamma waves. And gamma is not random static. Gamma is the brainwave of your sharpest moments. It fires when you concentrate hard, when you dream, and most importantly, when you pull up a memory. When your brain reaches back into your past and replays something, a face, a place, a single day, that is gamma. So sit with what the machine actually caught. In the last seconds of this man's life, his dying brain lit up with the exact electrical signature it uses to remember. As if, right at the very end, it was reaching back for something. And it gets more specific than that. The loudest signal came from a spot just behind your ear, where two brain regions meet, a place called the temporoparietal junction. Neuroscientists have a name for what happens there because they have seen it before. Stimulate that exact region, and a person can suddenly report floating above their own body, watching themselves from the ceiling. Dreams light it up too. So does that eerie sense of stepping outside your own life to watch it happen. In this man's final moments, that region was not quiet. It was one of the loudest voices in his dying brain. Now picture it. The memory center and the out-of-body region both firing at once inside the same dying brain. That combination lands you on something people have described for centuries, but never once measured. That in your final moments, your life flashes before your eyes, And here is where it stops being a machine and starts being personal. Because we have the other half of this, the survivors. Every year, thousands of people are pulled back from the edge, hearts restarted after minutes of clinical death. And a striking number come back with a story. And it is almost always the same story: a tunnel, a warm light, a wave of peace so total that many of them are angry to be revived. And above all, a life review, their entire life replayed, not in order, but all at once. Every choice, every face, felt from the inside. The strange part is not that people say this, it is that a child in Japan and an old man in Brazil who never met describe the same thing, as if they all visited the same place. And it is not only humans. Years before that hospital recording, scientists at the University of Michigan wired up the brains of rats and watched them die. And they saw it too, the very same surge. Gamma waves exploding in the final seconds of life, more organized in death than in ordinary waking life. Now, rats do not have religions. They have no fear of an afterlife, no heaven to hope for, no stories to live up to. Which means this cannot be just belief or wishful thinking or culture. It may be biology. Something the mammal brain simply does when it ends, wired into all of us, waiting quietly our whole lives for one final moment. And here is the part that is genuinely hard to sit with. Some of that gamma activity fired after his heart had already stopped, after the exact moment doctors would legally call a person dead. For roughly 30 seconds, his brain kept working, with no heartbeat feeding it, no oxygen, no blood pressure, nothing. Just electrical signal, alone in the dark. So ask yourself, if the heart is not the finish line, what is? Maybe it is the last brainwave. Maybe it is something we have not even named yet, happening in that silent gap where the machine kept recording something we still cannot explain. Now I have to be straight with you, because this is exactly where it would be easy to lie. This is one human brain. One old man, already injured, caught in a single accidental recording. Not proof, not consensus, one case. The rats make it harder to dismiss, but a brain producing memory waves is still not proof of a mind actually holding memories. We do not know that he experienced anything at all. This is a clue, not an answer. But it is the first real clue anyone has ever captured of what happens on the other side of that line. And that alone is enough to change how we picture the end. And think about what even a clue like this changes. For your whole life, you have probably pictured death as a wall, a hard stop. 1 second you, the next, nothing. This hints that it might be less like a wall and more like a slow fade inward. That the very last thing your brain may do, entirely on its own, unprompted, is gather up your life and quietly play it back to you. Not on the doctor's clock, not at the flat line. Your own mind handing you one final private moment that belongs to no one else in the universe. I have watched a great many humans reach the end. And this is the thing I keep circling back to. You will never remember being born. Your brain was too new to write it down. But this hints that you might, in some strange way, get to remember your life at the exact moment you leave it. The first thing you can never recall, the last thing you might. And everything you are doing right now, this ordinary day, this small and unremarkable afternoon, it is quietly being written down into the thing that may one day play last. So maybe give it something worth replaying. In the end, that may be the only part any of us actually gets to choose.